Next on Currents News, Christ is alive. That's what Pope Francis is calling his major new exhortation addressed to all Christian young people. We'll have the story on what the document is about.
Nearly 3 years after Karina Vetrano was killed near her Howard Beach, Queens home, her family has received justice. I'm Tim Harfman, and that story is coming up.
The pro-life movie Unplanned is doing well at the box office despite a campaign of opposition. Emily Druby, and that story is ahead.
Plus, a big fight over health care is brewing, one that could last until next election day. The news starts right now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. Pope Francis is telling the young people of the world that Christ is alive. That's the title of his major document, summing up last year's Bishop Synod on Young People and the Family. The letter takes on the big issues facing the church today. Melissa Butts is at the Vatican with the story.
After the 2018 October Synod, the Vatican has published Pope Francis's post-synodal document on youth, Christus Vivit, which he signed on March 25th in Loreto. Christus Vivit, or officially Christ is alive in English, draws on ideas established during the Synod, presenting them over 9 chapters. The exhortation presents ideas of change within the church, calling for a young church. Pope Francis also asks for a church with open doors and inclusive youth ministry. He states one does not have to accept fully all the teachings of the church to take part, but rather have an open mind.
They are concrete themes specific to young people, the digital world, the world where they live, the family, and the relationship of dialogue needed within it, especially with the elderly. The Pope has repeated this many times.
Sexual morality is defined as a source of incomprehension and alienation from the church, viewed as a place of judgment and condemnation for young people. The Pope admits that youth question gender identity and homosexuality, while terminology like LGBT is avoided. The document calls youth to greater responsibility, even amidst the abuse crisis. He asks that young people be courageous enough to remind priests of their mission if they see he's at risk or is taking the wrong path. Trafficking, violence, and abuse are discussed along with migrants. Pope Francis asks youth not to see them as a threat or lacking the same dignity as every other human. Women, which was a key synod topic, is also mentioned. It says church history shows male authoritarianism, domination, enslavement, abuse, and sexist violence. The Pope calls for greater equality between males and females, but says the church does not agree with everything feminists propose. Discernment towards marriage, religious life, or consecration is also included, calling the family the first place of accompaniment for every young person. With each of these themes, Pope Francis's main message is one of hope, encouraging young people to continue despite painful or difficult situations. He reminds them that God is love and He's alive, and he asks them to swim against the tide. At the Vatican, Melissa Butts, Currents News. Back to you in New York, Liz.
Thank you, Melissa. The full text of Christ is Alive is posted on the Currents News website at currentsny.tv. The link is included with Melissa's report. The Pope's exhortation that Christ lives tackles major issues facing the church. He writes about the role of women, vocations, and clerical sex abuse. However, not included in the Holy Father's 33,000-word letter is the phrase zero tolerance of abuse, which is part of the foundation of the U.S. Bishop's landmark Dallas Charter for the protection of minors. Crux Editor-in-Chief John Allen joins us now to discuss what Francis has and what he has not written. John, let's get right to it. The apostolic exhortation is being praised for calling on the church to invest in young people, but there is that question about why the Pope avoided using the term zero tolerance. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the Pope devoted almost 1,000 words in this exhortation to the subject of the clerical sex abuse scandals, so it's striking. And of course, let's remember that the question of whether or not to use the phrase zero tolerance was also actively debated at the Synod of Bishops last October, upon which this exhortation is based. So I think what's going on here, Liz, is that it is clear that increasingly when the Vatican and when this Pope, in any event, talks about the clerical sex abuse scandals, I think you're unlikely to hear the phrase zero tolerance. In some quarters, the phrase zero tolerance has come not just to mean the one strike and you're out policy, but the whole American response to the abuse scandals. So things like public disclosure of names, extensive litigation, press conferences. These are things that bishops in many parts of the world don't really think would fly in their own backyard. So I think what we're seeing here is Francis increasingly not really abandoning the substance of the zero tolerance policy, but certainly that vocabulary.
John, having discussed what the Holy Father did not mention, let's talk more about what we do know. During the Vatican's historic summit on the protection of minors, Pope Francis released these 21 points of reflection regarding the sexual abuse crisis. He asked church leaders to, and I'm quoting here, observe the traditional principle of proportionality of punishment with respect to the crime committed. So basically, he's addressing how clergy guilty of sexual abuse should be judged. Zero tolerance in this case would force them to leave public ministry, which you touched upon. Why is Francis supporting this approach? Clarify that even more for us.
Here we're talking about what is the ultimate fate of a priest under church law. That is, can he remain in the priesthood or not? I think what the Vatican is moving towards is a kind of diverse global standard there. I think in the United States, parts of Western Europe, there, I think, they've signed off on one strike and you're out as the appropriate solution to that set of circumstances. I think there are some other circumstances when they look around the world, they are not quite so sure it would work. I mean, for instance, we could talk about a badly underdeveloped society where when a priest is accused of the serial sexual abuse of children, there are no civil prosecutors, there are no police, there are no secular facilities where he could be maintained. And therefore, we would be sure that no further children are being put in harm's way. I think there, some church leaders think just washing their hands and cutting that guy loose is actually an irresponsible thing to do. That by keeping him in the priesthood, but under sanction and under supervision, that gives the church the best shot at making sure that no further children are violated.
All right, John, as always, we covered a lot. And as always, I thank you very much, my friend. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The U.S. bishops are enthusiastic about the teaching from Pope Francis, saying that the Church of the United States welcomes the document as, quote, a wonderful summons to the Church to more vigorously invest in youth and young adults, especially those on the peripheries and those disconnected from the Church. New action is being considered to protect survivors born alive after an abortion. The U.S. bishops won a vote on a bill that would give abortion survivors the same medical assistance as any other newborn. The bishops say the nation is better than to allow infanticide, and they give several reasons why protection is necessary. The first being babies are born alive during abortions. The bishops cite evidence that babies born alive are killed or neglected. The church leaders argue current laws are insufficient. And finally, they point to New York's abortion law, which removed existing protections for babies born alive. An update in the political battle over health care. President Trump is backing away from his push to repeal Obamacare, and the fight over the Affordable Care Act could last through Election Day 2020. Kelly Smoot has the latest from Washington.
The battle over health care just got an extension. President Trump tweeting Monday that a vote on repealing and replacing Obamacare will, quote, be taken right after the election when Republicans hold the Senate and win back the House.
We'll go through the election. We have a very good chance at retaking the House, and we'll vote in the best health care package we've ever had.
Democrats quickly pounced.
The president tweeted that they will come up with their plan in 2021. Translation: they have no health care plan.
The White House sought to shift focus to the Democrats.
We also know Democrats are unwilling to work with this president to fix the broken system that we have, whether it's on health care, whether it's on immigration.
The president's latest shift, coming a week after his administration announced it would back a federal judge's ruling that the entire Affordable Care Act should be scrapped, a reversal from the administration's previous stance that only portions could not be defended.
So we're going to get rid of Obamacare.
The president's decision meant that health care would be a central campaign issue for 2020.
Whether or not to repeal the ACA. I mean, he has put that on the ballot in a very direct way.
Until then, the legal challenges against Obamacare will continue to make their way through the federal court system. In Washington, Kelly Smoot, Currents News.
A record number of migrants are being released from a detention center in Texas, and Sister Norma Pimentel of Catholic Charities is taking them in. It's the latest response to the overcrowding caused by a flood of migrants at the border.
How come so many people all of a sudden, this couple of weeks, all of a sudden, they almost all started coming, It's never happened before.
Customs and Border Patrol says over 1,700 migrants were caught in a 24-hour period, breaking an all-time record. The U.S. auto industry could be crippled if President Trump carries out his threat to close the U.S.-Mexico border. The vice president of the Auto Research Center, Kristen Gicek, warns auto production in America would shut down within a week. Gicek says nearly every automaker in the U.S. depends on parts imported from Mexico. Tijuana and Acapulco rank as the most dangerous cities in the world, and that has Bishop Juan Castro calling on his country to pray for peace and an end to violence. The new list is based on the number of homicides. Overall, Mexican cities hold 5 of the top 6 places in the survey. The bishop addressed his fellow citizens saying, "I invite you once more to continue prayer vigils for peace, for justice. Be courageous. It's worth it." The man charged with murdering Karina Vetrano was found guilty on all counts last night at his retrial. Karina was killed while out for a jog in Howard Beach in August of 2016. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
The verdict Karina Vetrano's family had been waiting for. An emotional scene inside this Queens courtroom last night after the jury spoke. Chanel Lewis found guilty on all counts in the killing of Karina Vetrano. The 30-year-old was brutally murdered in August 2016 while jogging near her Howard Beach home.
This is the end of a long journey for the Vetrano family and for Howard Beach.
Father Francis Colamaria is the pastor of St. Helen's Church, the Vetrano family's parish. He says now starts a healing process.
It's caused an emotional state for this family that has really brought them to their knees. Who could imagine their daughter being brutally murdered?
Outside the Vetrano home today, angel wings attached to the second floor. A white bow and purple flowers tied to a nearby telephone pole. The family declined our request for an interview. Augustus Agati is a retired New York State Supreme Court justice. A friend of the family's, the former judge had left the Vetrano home moments before our interview.
Obviously, there's a closure to this. It's not a full closure. They still don't have their daughter. But I could see a difference. They seemed calmer.
Vetrano was raised Catholic and graduated from Archbishop Malloy High School and St. John's University. DNA linked Lewis to the Howard Beach jogger. As for Lewis, the 22-year-old was escorted out of the courtroom in handcuffs. Lewis is scheduled to be sentenced on April 17th and could face life without parole.
The case is over upon sentence, but there's always the appeals process. We say in our faith, the truth makes us free, but in his case, it doesn't.
In Howard Beach, Queens, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
There's a lot more news headed your way. Today is World Autism Awareness Day. In just moments, I'll speak with Janice Aris from Brooklyn's Mercy Home for Children about what we should know regarding the condition. Moviegoers are flocking to see the pro-life movie Unplanned, even though there's a campaign being mounted against the film. Plus, a Catholic archbishop is coming to the defense of Chick-fil-A. We'll tell you why next. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@thesalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. The pro-life movie Unplanned is being well received by audiences. Last weekend's opening brought in more than $6 million at the box office, but there's a campaign being waged against the film. Currents News' Emily Druby has the story.
As Nancy Davies heads to watch the pro-life movie Unplanned in the theater, she's thrilled to know many other people are too.
I'm very happy that it's doing so well. I think so many women who really haven't known what abortion is are wanting to see it.
The film is based on the true life story of Abby Johnson, a former Planned Parenthood clinic director who became a champion for the pro-life movement after witnessing an abortion.
I saw it. It was like it was twisting and fighting for its life.
The film is receiving positive reaction from viewers. It brought in an impressive $6.1 million during opening weekend, despite only being shown in about 1,000 theaters across the country. The high number impressive, considering the amount of adversity the film has faced. First, the flick received an R rating, which producers unsuccessfully tried to change. Then the film's Twitter account was briefly suspended during opening weekend. Further, the producers claimed tens of thousands of their Twitter followers disappeared for no known reason. And many TV networks also refused to televise advertisements for the film. Even inside the Kips Bay AMC, where the movie is being shown, there was a lack of advertising for the film, including in the portal where customers buy their tickets. But still, the movie is receiving rave reviews from moviegoers. While leaving the theater, Fran Collins suggested everyone should go see it.
And I enjoyed it. I'm glad I saw it.
So does Kathleen Black, who works for the Bridge to Life, a Catholic pregnancy support center in Queens.
I think if people see it, again, no matter what the age, especially the younger the better, that they will actually find out what the truth really is about abortion.
Black and other members of the Bridge to Life, including Catherine Donahoe, say they were touched by the film.
The one scene that really was very moving was when the 6 women were in the waiting room after their abortions, and the looks on their faces and how they were treated like cattle.
Unplanned is showing throughout the day at both AMCs in Kips Bay and Times Square. In Kips Bay, Emily Druby, Currents News.
San Antonio is banning Chick-fil-A from opening a new location at its airport, and San Antonio Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Siller is coming to the restaurant's defense. He says the marketplace and not elected officials should decide whether a company is allowed to operate. The Christian fast food restaurant is well known for its policy of closing on Sundays, and its president supports the biblical definition of the family in reference to gay marriage. That position prompted the city council to vote for the ban. Pieces of the same puzzle. Today is World Autism Awareness Day, which is meant to spread awareness and acceptance of the disorder. Now, according to the World Health Organization, 1 in 160 children are on the spectrum. Here to help educate us on what more we need to know about autism is Janice Aris. She's the executive director of Brooklyn's Mercy Home. Janice, thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the big question. What is autism?
Autism is typically characterized as an inability for social interaction, and it's also displayed by repetitive behaviors such as verbalizations or movements. An individual on the spectrum has many different issues that they are dealing with, and the reason why they call it a spectrum is because typically no 2 individuals diagnosed with autism displays their symptomology in the same way.
Okay. What are some of the greatest misconceptions?
I think the first is that it's just a childhood disease.
Okay.
I think that many people misunderstand that individuals or children with autism will grow up and continue to have autism. Autism is what we call a womb to the tomb diagnosis. Certainly.
So there's no treatment for it. There's no cure for it.
There's no cure, but there are certainly interventions and there are certain therapies that will help an individual with autism gain greater independence in their lives.
Now, if you're not in the medical field, if you're not trained, how does someone like me relate to a child with autism to make them feel comfortable?
I would certainly say with love. I would say love first. But at Mercy Home, we have a creative arts program where we have opportunities to provide different therapies. We do drama therapy, art therapy, fine art therapy, music therapy, and yoga therapy. And we've discovered that through those therapies and the interventions that we give voice to individuals with autism, that we kind of meet them at a modality or a medium where they're comfortable, and through that modality they're able to communicate and we're able to better support them. So for example, in our music therapy, a person who has limited social interaction, they may not talk, or maybe they're even nonverbal. But once our therapists start to play music and we find that we can teach them musicianship, they are telling us stories through their music. They're telling us what they need, what their likes are, what their desires are, what their hopes are, and so that's how we help and support them.
What strides have been made, Janice, in terms of the treatment of and understanding of autism?
I think the first is recognition. The biggest thing about autism, and the reason why the puzzle piece is a known entity, it's that it's hard to kind of pinpoint what causes autism and how to treat each individual with autism. It's an individualized support. And so I think the recognition that it is an individualized support and needs services, that is the greatest stride.
All right, Janice, thank you so much. How do we get in touch with you?
mercyhomeny.org. And we have a Saturday program, and we also have a mindfulness program for families who want to be able to de-stress when they're caring for their loved ones. And we're here in the borough of Brooklyn.
All right, Janice, thank you again very much. Great information.
Thank you.
Still to come on Currents News, a strong supporter of migrants has a lot to say as she takes over a top Catholic immigration agency. And I'll report on how you can help Catholic Relief Services this Lent. We'll be right back. Anna Gallagher is the child of Irish immigrants, and now she's the leader of the highly regarded Catholic Legal Immigration Network. She takes over the organization known as Clinic. They embrace the gospel value of welcoming the stranger. Her parents arrived from Ireland at a time she says the United States was more welcoming. She's a top litigator and described winning asylum cases as bittersweet because the person is safe but has lost her country. Catholic Relief Services is also known for helping the stranger among us through the many humanitarian programs that they offer. Each year during Lent, CRS's Rice Bowl program gives all Catholic parishes, including those in the Brooklyn Diocese, an opportunity to help the less fortunate at home and worldwide. It's a charitable initiative that puts faith into action. CRS Rice Bowl combines the Lenten practices of praying, fasting, and giving alms to help people all over the world, one bowl of rice at a time. Catholic Relief Services sends cardboard rice bowls to parishes or schools. The donations deposited inside are used to help feed the hungry around the world and in dioceses throughout the United States.
As Catholics, we are a both-and people called to support people who are hungry here and around the world, because we believe that every single person is a child of God. Every person has human dignity and so is worth supporting.
People like 16-year-old Annette in Uganda, a refugee and orphan from South Sudan who cares for her 3 younger siblings. Each day she struggles to cook, clean, and provide water for them in very unstable conditions. And then there's Christian, who fled Sri Lanka to India during the war. He returned home to find his family's farm destroyed. CRS helped him, his wife, and 3 children restart his farm so they could take care of themselves. Since beginning in 1975, nearly $300 million have been raised during each year's 40 days of Lent. And for more information on the work of Catholic Relief Services, visit their website at crsricebowl.org. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.